and welcome to episode 6 of On the Shelf after a little break for the festive period. Here I am, taking you through again in my slightly reconfigured office, taking you through some of the books that are on the shelf. And there's a slight problem in that I keep moving them around, so I'm having to keep checking back to see if I've talked about them before. I've checked that out and I haven't, but episode 6 probably looked at maybe 5 books in each episode. That's 30 books we're coming up to, aren't we? We're getting there. So yes, I might start repeating things, because as I use my books, what I find is they kind of gravitate down towards this end of the room. I find them and I use them and they go back on the shelf, and if I'm using them once, I tend to use them for a period of time, because books are there to use, aren't they? They're used to get into, and I underline things, and that really helps me when I come to do something like this. So I've got a clutch. I have a clutch of books here. There they all are. Have a quick look at those. Quite an interesting little clutch there. I do like the orange spines of the Penguin books, really do. And I often keep them all together. But I've put these in an order because as I was figuring this out, I thought, that one follows that one really nicely. The first one is Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. It says international bestseller because, my goodness, it absolutely should be. And I haven't even pulled out anything to tell you about this book. I haven't found an underline or anything that I'd want to tell you about, because I'll just tell you about this premise that Kahneman comes up with that works everywhere. And lots of people might have heard about this already. And he makes the point that we have 2 systems in our brains that help us kind of navigate the world: System 1 and System 2. Or as some commentators and writers have started to call it later than that, an automatic system, System 1, and a deliberate system, System 2. And Kahneman makes the point. He's an economist, so he's interested himself, I suppose, in how to kind of, sell things to people and that sort of stuff. So, System 1 and System 2. System 1 is our intuitive, instinctive brain. You're in System 1 when you're driving the car, for example, not really concentrating or thinking about what's going on around, because you're just kind of on autopilot. Yeah, and that's fine in situations like that, isn't it? But as soon as the lights up ahead change to red, or you hear a siren of an ambulance or something, or somebody steps out, suddenly you have to start to maybe switch into System 2 and start to think about what to do. And he makes the point with other examples that we don't like System 2 because System 2 is hard work. We have to kind of think really hard when we're in System 2. And when I use this in class, I get students to add 2 and 2, 4 and 4, 8. It's instinctive, it's intuitive, we know that. But if I say 232 multiplied by 74, they go and grind to a halt, because they've got to think, right, how do I do that? How do I work that out? I'm not just going to be able to rely on my instinctive brain. I need to set my deliberate brain to the task of getting a piece of paper or getting the calculator out and putting the numbers in, or what it happens to be. I have to now think about this. And when we have to think about things that are really hard, we tend to just stop. We tend to just stop and don't do them, or we procrastinate, which is another interest of mine. Think about why we do that. Tend to procrastinate, tend to put it off. Stereotypes exist in that System 1 thinking as well. So in my my work as a social work lecturer, obviously we talk about stereotypes, and we easily default to stereotypes when we're in System 1. All people X are like this, all people Y are like this, and they're not, obviously, but we like it because it's easy, and in there lies a problem. So that's Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. The next one is this, Stumbling on Happiness by Daniel Gilbert. And obviously my work around well-being and self-care and productivity, I think about, or have thought about in the past, happiness quite a bit, because I think, well, what keeps us happy? What makes us happy? And this book's really good. And I've just picked a couple of sections out here that I think are interesting, just to stimulate your appetite, stimulate your thinking. The elaborate tapestry of our experience is not stored in memory, at least not in its entirety. Memory's a really fascinating thing. Rather, it is compressed for storage by first being reduced to a few critical threads, such as a summary, dinner was disappointing, or a small set of key features, tough steak, corked wine, snotty waiter. Later, when we want to remember our experience, our brains quickly reweave the tapestry by fabricating, not actually retrieving, the bulk of the information that we experience as a memory. And we've all got experiences of this, haven't we, in our lives, where somebody is recounting a tale that involved us. And we're listening to this story unfold and thinking, it's not my memory of it, because we take those key facts and weave a story around us. And we're great storytellers, aren't we? Human beings are great storytellers. But it makes me think of situations when I was a practitioner around older people with dementia. I worked quite well. My work in life as a social worker was working with older people. So I came across this quite a bit, where the older person would be recounting a memory, and because there were certain key facts that weren't quite accurate, it was a indicator of the dementia. And it might not have been. It might have just been that they were kind of weaving their story together, and the facts that are being remembered by the son or the daughter might not actually be the facts anyway, because they're also fabricating and reweaving the story. And then this other one here, I'm interested in resilience, although it's a bit of a word now that I try not to use because I think it's too loaded. There's a book I'm reading at the minute that might come off the shelf at some point to have a look at. Resilience, Gilbert's saying here, resilience is often the most commonly observed outcome trajectory following exposure to a potentially traumatic event. Indeed, studies of those who survive major trauma suggest that the vast majority do quite well, and that a significant portion claim that their lives were enhanced by the experience. It's really interesting. Trauma might not all be negative, there might be growth. And that brings me to this weighty extravaganza. Nassim Nicholas Taleb, Antifragile, things that gain from disorder. And he's making just that point. He talks about fragile, robust, and anti-fragile. And fragile, he gives the example of like a china cup. You have to keep it somewhere safe. You have to treat it with care and attention, be very delicate with it and fuss over the cup, because if you treat it harshly, it's going to crack. It's fragile. And then there are things that are robust. They can stand up to some knocks. They are what they are, And then there's anti-fragile, which is something or someone who actually enhances themselves, or the situation is enhanced or whatever, through exposure to some sort of trauma, I suppose. So that's what this is about. This read was interesting because I think I started this book and got to about page 21, 22, maybe up to 50 on one occasion, and stopped because it's quite dense, heavy in its language and in its ideas. But my, is it absolutely 100% worth the effort of pushing on through and having a read of it, because it's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. What have I underlined here? Failures to self-repair come largely from maladjustment, either too few stressors or too little time for recovery between them. There's a crucial thing, isn't it? So stressors in our lives are actually good things. Stressors motivate us to do things, take action, that kind of thing. But the problem is too little recovery between those things. How true, how true. Really interesting. What's this here? Now, the crux of complex systems, those with interacting parts, is that they convey information to these component parts through stressors. Or, thanks to these stressors, your body gets information about the environment, not through your logical apparatus, i.e. your brain, your intelligence, and your ability to reason, compute and calculate, but through stress via hormones or other messengers yet to be discovered. Really, really important. I think that's really important. We understand and interpret the world as a consequence of the biological, chemical, neurological reactions that take place in our bodies. There's a thing that often gets said in some of the literature that I read about stress and resilience and productivity and self-care and all that kind of thing, that stress isn't real. And what they mean by that is that it's a feeling. It's a feeling that is born out of the chemicals that are washing around your body when you are afraid of something. So stress is a response to something fearful in front of us. Historically, a woolly mammoth or a saber-toothed tiger. Now those things are the desk job, aren't they? Those are the things that create fear now. Provide for the worst. I love this. Provide for the worst. The best can take care of itself. This may sound like a platitude, but it's not. Just observe how people tend to provide for the best and hope the worst will take care of itself. I think that's so true. I'm going to leave that with you. 2 more. This one, Matthew Walker's Why We Sleep. Again, I'm not even going to read anything. Will I read something from this? Probably won't. It's just about sleep. And Matthew Walker's researched sleep all of his life. And if you are at all interested in the function of sleep, what good quality sleep, what good quantity sleep looks like, this has to absolutely be the go-to book. REM sleep enhances emotional and social sophistication. REM sleep's the stuff we get nearer the end of the night. Humans are not sleeping the way nature intended. How true. Keep the lights on for longer. I write a chapter in my book, How to Thrive in Professional Practice, or the reversioning of it, How to Thrive at Work, on sleep, and I use a lot of Matthew Walker's book in that, saying that very thing. We keep the lights on now too late. We stay up because we feel. I was reading something the other day actually that said sometimes we stay up late because that's one of the only points in the day we feel we have control. I can stay up late if I want to. You know, I have had no control during the day, work, family. I can now control staying up late. The downside of that is the next day you're tired. And the final one, Albert Camus, The Plague. There's his name. It's like light blue, so you can hardly say it. The Plague. And I came across this book and read this book right at the start of lockdown, because it's a story of a plague infesting a land and people forced to isolate and return to their homes and not go out and not go anywhere for fear of this deadly virus. I'm laughing at the connection, not the lockdown, believe you me. And it was just perfect. I came across it and I thought, I'll read that now. It remained compulsory to declare the disease and isolate patients. Houses of sick people were to be closed and disinfected, their relatives put into preventative quarantine, and burials organised by the authorities in conditions that will be described later, he says. I mean, it was really an interesting time to read this book, and I think that's the fascinating thing, isn't it? Sometimes you come across a book at a time when it's just interesting to read it. So anyway, there you go. There we have it. We have Thinking Fast and Slow, Daniel Kahneman. Stumbling on Happiness, Daniel Gilbert. Nassim Nicholas Taleb's Antifragile. Matthew Walker's Why We Sleep. And Albert Camus' The Plague.